Good afternoon, everybody. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Karis Circle. Karis Circle is the nonprofit programming arm of Karis Books, and Karis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. I'm very honored to be here today with Drs. Hazzard and Collins and Ms. Brenda Muhammad to discuss a really important topic and a really beautiful children's book, Moving On After Gun Violence. Drs. Hazzard and Collins, along with Dr. Marianne Solano, are also the authors of the New York Times bestseller, Something Happened in Our Town, a child's story about racial injustice, which was published in 2018. The authors met over 2 decades ago as Emory faculty members working with families at the Grady campus. All have been active in community organizations and social justice efforts. Dr. Collins is currently an associate professor at Morehouse School of Medicine, where she is the director of behavioral medicine. And we're joined by Brenda Muhammad, who, since losing her eldest son to violent crime, has created both a volunteer movement and an agency that advocates for the fundamental rights of victims and witnesses of crime with compassion, dignity, and respect. Ms. Muhammad founded Mothers of Murdered Sons and Daughters, acronym MOMS, in 1990. She is currently the executive director of Atlanta Victims Assistance and a national leader in violence prevention. So we're really honored to have all three of you here with us today. We know that gun violence is something that Atlanta in particular is very much struggling with right now. And of course, nationally, we're all struggling with this right now. So this is very timely, very important. And at Karis, we always believe in starting with children. So we have many groups designed to help children understand issues of violence, as well as systemic issues of racism and, economic insecurity, all of those things. And so we're very glad to have this book as another tool in our toolkit. So I'm going to get out of the way. We're going to bring up the PowerPoint so that everybody can see the beautiful art in this book as well. And we'll get going. So the last thing I want to say is if folks watching at home have questions, you can drop those in the chat, and we'll rejoin at the end to get some of those questions answered. So welcome to you all. Thank you all so much.
I'm assuming it's time for me to...
I'm not seeing the screen share. Are y'all?
I'm pulling it up right now. It'll just be 1 second.
All right.
But yes, you can start talking. Well,
I can. I'm so happy to be here with you all, and ask.
Yeah, so happy to have this time to share together.
Oh, this is such an important topic, as was mentioned. We've had so much happening in our communities, not in just Atlanta, but throughout the country. So how timely, and what a wonderful book to begin with. And we want to thank you, Dr. Collins, as well as Dr. Hazzard and Solano. This is perfect for the timing. I first want to ask, and I'm going to ask you, Anne, what made you and your co-authors decide to write a story about gun violence? It didn't just happen. This has been in the making for a while.
Yes, it has. And I'll address that. And then I think we'd like to go ahead and read the book and then come back to some further questions. But
would you? Okay.
We decided to write this book because, as everyone knows, gun violence is a big problem in this country. Over 100 people die as a result of gun violence every day. And in 2020, that number included, for the year, 5,000 kids and teens. And obviously, not only the victims were impacted, but friends and family. And really all of us are impacted as we hear about gun violence in media stories, or through knowing someone who's been impacted, or hearing people talk about it. So we felt that kids were being exposed to this problem, and that parents could use a tool, as ER said, a tool to help them talk about what's a tough tough topic. So I'll let Marietta start with reading the book, and I'll finish, and then we'll be glad to come back to some other questions. Thank you.
You can tell how excited I was. I just jumped over the and wanted to do all the I'm ready for solutions, and you have one to offer, but we'll read the book first.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Oh, for sure. Thank you guys so much. And hello to everyone who's out there in our virtual audience. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your Saturday to be with us. So I'm going to go ahead and get started reading our book. Something Happened in Our Park, Standing Together Against Gun Violence. Okay. Something bad happened in our park last night, said Miles's dad. Keisha was shot in the leg, but she's okay. She'll be home from the hospital tomorrow. Miles felt his stomach drop. Cousin Keisha had been living with his family since she started college in the fall. What happened? Asked Miles. Someone started shooting during the concert and Keisha got shot by accident, said his dad. If it happened to Keisha, it could happen to anyone, Miles thought. The next week at school, Miles got in trouble twice for daydreaming. Instead of doing his work, he drew picture after picture. His teacher sent the scariest picture home to his parents with a note. Oh no, said his mother. Is this our neighborhood? It looks frightening. It is, said Miles. I wish there were no guns here. I want to move somewhere else. But there is less money and more violence here since the factory.
Next slide, please. There we go.
Okay. There is less money and more violence here since the factory closed, but we can't afford to move. This is where your dad and I grew up. There's a lot that we love about this place, like Grandma B's red velvet cake and the 8th Avenue Church choir. His dad said, the most important thing is that the people here care for each other. Okay, great. 2 weeks later, Keisha was watching Miles and his little brother Marcus. They had just finished dinner when they heard 3 loud pops. Miles felt his stomach drop again. Are those gunshots? Next slide. Okay, next slide. There we go. Keisha seemed frozen at first. Then she took charge. I'm not sure, but we're safe here. Let's all take a deep breath. We can't control what's happening out there, but we can stay calm and keep living our lives. But how? Asked Miles. Let's do something you enjoy, said Keisha. How about drawing a picture together? When his mom got home, she found a surprise on the fridge. One day, Keisha came home and announced there was a meeting today at the community center. People from the neighborhood and my college friends want to do something about all the guns. Like what? Asked Miles. We're planning to meet with the mayor to ask for money for a community safety program. I'll go with you to the next meeting, said Miles's dad. When Keisha got back from winter break, Miles's dad told her the good news. The mayor had agreed to fund the Peace in the Streets project. Finally, this neighborhood is getting its fair share. You really helped get the ball rolling, he said. Keisha was back to her cheerful self. She went out at night with her friends. For Miles, it was different. Most days he felt okay, but sometimes scary scenes popped into his mind, and he always stayed away from the windows at night. Okay, Ann, you want to take over?
Sure. Soon, it was time for the spring festival at the park. Miles's friend David texted to ask Miles and Marcus to go to the festival with his family. I don't think we can, said Miles. Why did you say that? Asked his mom. Your father and I have to work. You could go have fun. Miles whispered, What if there's another shooting? I know you're worried, and I am too, but we can't keep avoiding the park. If we don't claim it, who will? There will be lots of neighbors there who care about you and want to make the park safe. I bet the Peace in the Streets program will be getting started. Miles sat down and drew a picture of how he wanted the park to be. It was peaceful and beautiful. He decided that he would go to the festival after all. At the festival, Miles saw a booth where people were signing up for summer activities. Keisha and Dad helped the city to start that program, he told David. Miles decided to sign up for art camp. He had a great idea for how to make the park more beautiful. A year after the shooting, the mayor was speaking in the park. Miles and Keisha saw David and some other kids running around the track. "Is that Officer Jones out there?" asked Miles. "Yeah," said Keisha. "Cops are coaching the track team." Mayor Wilson started the ceremony by saying, "Violence ends when dreams begin." She announced the opening of a bread company in the neighborhood with 100 new jobs. Keisha talked about everybody working together and led a people power cheer. After the speeches, Keisha showed the mayor the mural on the community center. "My cousin and his art camp made that," she said proudly. "Claim peace," read the mayor, nodding. "It's perfect." Miles smiled. "If we don't claim it, who will?" Thanks, ER. You can, that's the end of the story, so we can go back to the regular screen.
Well, I want to give you all an applause for such a beautiful story. I love hearing this story.
Thank you so much.
Can I ask questions?
Sure.
Thank you. Again, thank you for the beautiful story. And thank you for telling us why you all came together to write this book. And we'll learn a little bit more about why, I'm sure, as we communicate here. I've found that it's different people have different opinions about gun violence and talking to young people about it. What age child do you think this book is appropriate for? Could you share with us, Marietta?
Sure, for sure. We feel this book is appropriate for kids ages 5 to 9, depending on the child. One thing we've learned in going out and just reading the book is that even older kids also appreciate the story and are able to get into the story. Our book is designed to be read to children by their parents or by an educator. And we hope that it will promote conversation and provide reassurance to the kids. Some people might even have said to us that maybe, gun violence is too heavy a topic for young children. And our response to that is that children often, even if parents aren't speaking to their children about gun violence or their children aren't saying anything about it, it's been our experience that that children may even overhear conversations about a shooting or some kind of gun violence incident. They may see something or hear something in the media. They may even hear gunshots in their neighborhood or know someone who's been a victim of gun violence. Mm-hmm. So kids need to be encouraged to express their concerns and ask questions rather than just deal with the anxiety on their own, which is why we think it's really important for parents and educators to have these conversations with their kids.
Well, that's really great. And I want to dig just a little bit deeper. And I think you talked about children being affected by this, and yes, they are. and for far too long, we've ignored the feelings and the impact that this violence has on children. But we're beginning to see now,
Oh,
how they suffer from trauma that's not treated. What if a parent or an educator has a child who is anxious about gun violence? They want to know. They need some sense of security to know or think that this will not happen to them. Reading about Miles, we read a little bit about that. What about children who are traumatized by a shooting? Can you talk a little bit about that, either of you or Ann?
I can certainly talk about it. Hopefully, Ann will rejoin us. Somehow she dropped off the screen. I hope she's able to rejoin us. But our book is certainly very appropriate for a child who is anxious about gun violence or who has been traumatized by gun violence, either because he heard about it,
Right.
hopefully not have witnessed it, but may have witnessed it. But our book is very appropriate for that child. An anxious child is likely to be able to identify with Miles and his struggles, and how Miles had a lot of fears after his cousin was accidentally injured.
Mm-hmm.
A child who is anxious can really identify with Miles. He or she can be inspired by seeing how Miles uses strategies to manage his fear and to start living his life again. The book also includes a reader's note at the end that gives parents more information about how to help an anxious child cope.
Yeah, thanks so much for that reader's note portion of the book. It's very, very helpful because it, like you said, identifies strategies for some of those issues, as well as how kids cope with anxiety.
Okay.
I'm excited about a program that we have, the Atlanta Victim Assistance, working with children over in the Carver cluster and Maynard Jackson. We're working with young people who have either witnessed violence or been victims of violence. So we're noticing a difference, and hopefully we can expand that later. But it's some heavy stuff that comes out of those meetings. But we'll talk more about that.
Okay.
But thank you for that. What made you decide to, the group, the authors, all of you, what made you all decide to set the story in a mostly African-American neighborhood?
Okay. That was certainly a purposeful decision on our part. If the other co-author, Dr. Chalana, were here, she's also a white woman. So there are two white women, and I'm the only African-American one. But we've known each other, as was indicated earlier, for many years. And we all worked down at Grady Hospital and worked at the Children's Health Care at Hughes Spalding. So we have a career-long commitment to providing services to underserved populations, and underserved populations in this case was primarily African American. So we purposefully made the decision to set this story in the African American community. But what's also most important is that Black boys are 10 times more likely to be hospitalized for a firearm injury than our white boys. Mm-hmm. And we wanted our story to really focus on the often overlooked victims of gun violence. Mm-hmm. Usually if there is a mass shooting, there's lots of media attention. Mm-hmm. But as a matter of fact, over 99% of shootings are not mass shootings. That's right. So we really wanted to be able to focus on this, on the overlooked victims of gun violence. Also, crimes of poverty, including gun violence, often occur in a segregated urban neighborhood. So we felt that would be a very realistic setting for our story. And, equally as important is the fact that we wanted to counter the negative portrayal of Black neighborhoods with explanations as to why these neighborhoods may have become impoverished. We wanted to counter negative portrayals of Black family life with an alternative view of families who choose to remain in these neighborhoods, and to try to strengthen these communities as opposed to leaving them. There are Black families that choose to stay in these neighborhoods and try to provide a positive role model, try to strengthen and rebuild the community. Miles's family had two loving, working parents. His cousin is living with them, which represents how often Black families tap into the extended family network. And also, it's really important to see how education is stressed. So we were very purposeful in the decision to locate the story in an urban area and to provide positive portrayals, of Black communities.
And it was a big plus that they would miss their red velvet cake and
oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. I would agree 100% there.
Did Ann get back?
She hasn't gotten back yet. I'm hoping she will.
Well, I'm sure you can answer for her.
Oh yeah, I can. So hopefully she'll rejoin us though.
I think you started talking a little bit about community empowerment and how important that is, and how it was one of the overall arcs in this story. What types of community programs that you all talked about really improve safety in the community?
Okay. Well, when writing a story about a scary problem, we definitely wanted to leave kids with a sense of hope. Mm-hmm. So when lack of opportunity is contributing to gun violence, economic redevelopment and youth mentoring programs are effective. So our fictional Peace in the Streets program included those components. We represented jobs at a new bakery and summer programs for the neighborhood kids. So also the police started coaching a neighborhood track team. This represents a community policing approach, which prioritizes building trust and community well-being as opposed to police being seen as very punitive. Our parent note, our note to readers, also mentions outreach programs like Cure Violence. These programs use community members and sometimes even gang members to reach out to individuals at high risk for violence. They try to defuse conflicts, discourage retaliation, and provide social services and job programs to encourage more constructive pathways for youth. So we were really excited to see that in her recent State of the City address, our Mayor Bottoms, said that she plans to allocate $5 million of the American Rescue Plan funds to expand the city's Cure Violence program. And she also wants to expand summer employment programs for teens. So these are some of the things we think really empower communities and will hopefully start to decrease the prevalence of gun violence.
Thank you those are some wonderful community interventions that you just shared with us. And I hope our audience took note of those interventions because, as you said, it takes everybody. It takes the whole community to be a part. And then there are corporations and agencies and other organizations that want to make a difference and they want to partner. But you've just shared with them some of the ways that they can be more involved in stopping this at the beginning rather than waiting until, it's too late. I know they're still working on trying to get her back on. So we'll just keep going if that's okay.
Oh, that's fine.
What kind of questions do you think we as parents or educators could ask while reading a book like this, your book? What kind of questions do you think should go back and forth and how they could be presented to the children?
Okay, sure. With questions such as, how does this story relate to your life? Okay. Yes. Might open the door for children to be able to talk about things they've been keeping on the inside. So how does the story relate to your life? I think that's a good question. Also, how about if you were painting a mural to promote a positive change in your community, what would your mural say? Okay. You can also go in a different direction and talk about anxiety. How did Miles cope with his anxieties and fears? What helps you when you're worried? What helps you to cope? Okay. Here's another idea to try. What do you think are some of the causes of gun violence? Thinking of these problems, what might be some solutions? So just kind of talking to children in language that they would understand. One other thing I thought would be important to mention is, because we were talking about the community, also what community level interventions that are likely to reduce gun violence. And there are three that we really strongly recommend. And that is, number one, that there should be reduced access to guns for high-risk individuals. We think that's really important. We also think that strategies to increase safe gun storage should be emphasized. And sometimes we have talked to kids about, well, what should you do if you see a gun lying in the grass? If you're out alone, what should you do if you see a gun? So talking to children about these kinds of things, and people who are gun owners, to make sure that these guns are safely stored, and also broader access to behavioral health care for people who have either suicidal or homicidal thoughts is really important too. The American Psychological Association, of which both Marianne and myself are members, really stress these recommendations. These strategies aren't discussed in our story in and of itself. We do provide resources for parents if they want to learn more and more about how to discuss these strategies with their kids.
That's really wonderful. You mentioned the gun piece, and that's a really big issue that's on the table everywhere now. But we can't seem to get anywhere. And it's these people, young people, they're too young to be able to buy guns. So where are they getting them from? We know that they are breaking into cars, they're taking them from homes. Access, it's really the access that they have to these weapons. Do you think that, and this is kind of off a little bit, but I've got to ask you because I'm really concerned, do you think owners of guns bear some responsibility if that gun is used to cause harm to another person?
Well, my personal opinion is certainly that they should try their best to make sure that these guns are stored in a very secure place, out of hopefully so the kids would know where they are. There's a lock, there's a combination that kids can't access. And if in fact a gun owner, a child has access to a gun, then I do think the gun owner should bear some responsibility.
I agree.
That's my personal opinion.
Yes. Look, this book tackles some tough topics, and a lot of parents may not know how to deal with that. They may not know how to answer some of these questions because some parents may be afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing. Some parents are doing the wrong thing, and kids see it, and it's kind of hard to say. I'm sorry, you were going to say something?
I said I agree. I was disagreeing with you.
And they will. It's hard for them to tell the child to do right when you laying a gun down somewhere, you threatening to kill somebody if they do this or the other. So there are some things that we as parents have a responsibility to do more than just talking, but we've got to really put ourselves into action.
I would certainly agree because, children certainly observe our behavior.
Yes.
They observe our behavior, and you can't say, what does it do as I say, not as I do. Your actions are very, very important. And, what we've done with the book is to include a reader's note at the back, as you mentioned earlier. Okay. And if it's okay with you, what I like to do is just to give an example of some of the dialogue that we have included in the reader's note.
Please.
For instance, and again, going along with questions that kids might ask, there's a section in there for parents that pose these types of questions. One of which is, why are there so many shootings in Miles's neighborhood? A kid might ask that question. So what could you as a parent say? One reason might be that it's easy for people in our country to buy guns. Many people don't feel safe, so they buy guns, but they don't store or use them safely. Mm-hmm. Maybe there are not enough jobs for everyone, or the jobs don't pay enough for families to survive. This situation makes it difficult for people to make good decisions for themselves and their families. Some people even do dangerous things like gambling, stealing, or selling drugs to get money. And they may use guns to settle disputes. There are usually very few people using guns this way in most neighborhoods, but they can make life scary for people who are obeying the laws and not hurting others. Okay. So what we've done is to try and, think of questions that children might ask their parents about guns. And that's just an example of a way a parent can talk to a child when they come with them with these really difficult questions.
And give them some positive something they can think about, and hopefully relate to. And in order for you to be able to tell your children these things, you got to be doing half of them right,
I would agree. I would agree 100%. 100%. I would agree. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's we think, we've learned a lot from the conversations I'm sure that we have with parents, and I'm sure you really learned a lot. Your team has learned a lot when you have these conversations with parents and children about your first book. You want to tell us a little bit about your first book? We hadn't talked about it much.
Oh, sure. I would love to do that. I have a copy of it right here. It's called Something Happened in Our Park. Okay.
Yes.
Yep. And
in our town.
I'm sorry, that's right.
One in our town.
The other one was Something Happened in Our Park. This one is Something Happened in Our Town. Okay.
Yeah.
Something Happened in Our Town, a child story about racial injustice.
Yeah.
But certainly many parents they were really pleased and impressed with this book. Okay. And what they've told us is that this story helped them to be able to initiate conversations with their children about race and about racism. Okay. Many parents have said that they wanted to be able to have these conversations with their kids, but they struggled to kind of find the words, to do this, and kept looking for a kind of situation that might crop up where they'd be able to have these conversations. So many parents have told us that the story helped them to talk to children about current events, very unfortunate events that happened, like the murder of George Floyd, and also to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement protest. So parents really were very happy and encouraged by this book. I have to be honest with you, Brenda, and say that there has been some backlash against the book by people who are threatened by it or don't agree with with its message, which is really about anti-racism.
Really?
Right. Some police officers have challenged the book, claiming that it's anti-police, because for those of you who have read the book, it's basically a book about a shooting of a Black man by a white police officer. Okay. And so some police have challenged the book, claiming that it's anti-police, but we don't say things against the police in that story. But we really feel it would have been inauthentic not to express the real and justified concerns of the Black community about police bias. And that's what the story kind of reflects. Furthermore, we believe that we represented a real balanced view of the police in this book. We haven't experienced children becoming fearful or thinking that all police are bad guys. Instead, they leave after reading the book and hearing about the book that police are human and they can make mistakes. Children get the message that everyone should be treated fairly and that you should not be treated differently based upon your race.
Wow. So that feeling this backlash, I'm sure this was pre-conviction of backlash was pre-conviction. Sure.
I was going to say, well, I do believe we've also had to address some post-conviction too, but
really,
yeah, which is unfortunate, but it's really, I guess, a double-edged sword in that it's really allowed us to engage in conversations with school boards, because some school systems, the parents have wanted to have our book removed from the libraries in their schools. So we've had some really, really open and meaningful conversations. The latest of which is with the other co-author. We had the police chief, a school police officer, PTA president, all of them. So we all came together and we talked about the book, and we even read the book, and they left feeling, I think, differently, feeling better. That we also have a readers and parents note in the back of that book too, right. And so I think it really was a good conversation. So
how has your reception been in the schools? Are the books in the schools or?
Well, the first book, we're just starting to promote the second book, which was released this past April. It's been really interesting with our first book. We have tried to, go and read it to different classrooms. We've tried to talk with administrators and PTAs about ways to incorporate it into their curriculum. I would say we've been met with resistance. We have met with resistance. We are in the Atlanta Public Schools socio-emotional socio-emotional education curriculum. Okay, so we were able to get it within that school system. Other school systems, some of the private school systems have been more reluctant, but I'm really thinking that as times have changed, because this book was released in 2018, that people will be more open. I've read it in classrooms and gotten a really positive response. So has Ann, so has Marianne. I've read it in my church setting. Okay, what's really interesting is that when the book was first released, I don't know, there have been, unfortunately, so many police shootings of Black men, boys, and, Black women that we went out, Ann and I went out to Sacramento, this is, of course, before COVID, to read our book after the shooting of Stephen Clark, okay? He was shot in the backyard of I think it was his parents' or his grandparents' home. So we went out there and we read the book to a town hall, and also to a school summer camp program where his little sister was. So we've been getting a lot of positive reactions, sometimes not so positive, but we've been able to deal with and have open conversations and discussions.
Well, that's really good, and we hope that will expand. And through this program, I'm sure that's going to open some doors as well. And as more of our community find out about this book and understand how valuable and impactful it is, I'm sure it's going to open some doors.
Okay.
Yeah. Who was it? Did she get back? Did they get back?
I guess she didn't. So I guess I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll just close by talking a little bit about this book. This is the latest book, something happened in our park, standing together after gun violence. And when we've also started to read this book to groups of people, and the responses that children has been, it's been great, and they kids can overcome their fears. And what some of the kids have said is that dreams are important. People can reach their dreams if violence doesn't get in the way. And they also were able to get the message that Miles stood up to fear by making this park more beautiful with his mural. So children have not been overwhelmed by the thought of talking about someone getting injured as a result of gun violence. They have really connected with Miles and his little brother Marcus in terms of having fears and anxiety, about what happened, and being able to develop strategies to help them cope, so that, again, he could go back to the park that he loved, and they could change their neighborhood, reclaim it, go and advocate to their mayor and get jobs back in that community, the thing that had really started to make the community go downhill. So it's been a really positive response so far.
Well, it's really when I first saw the book, I just hugged it. I just put it to my heart. I said, this is so wonderful, and what a great message, and how timely. So we really congratulate you all on this publication and your earlier story, your earlier book, and wish you many, many, many more. So I don't know if I think your audience may have some questions.
Right. So I don't know if there are any questions. I think
so. I don't think that we have any questions. This is ER.
Hey, ER.
We'll see in the chat that the person named Michael Isaacs is actually Dr. Hazzard. We've been trying really hard to get her in, but we have not been able to. So she's in here, but so she asks, can you tell us more about services offered by Atlanta Victims Assistance?
I'd be happy.
We would love to hear more about that.
We provide immediate response to victims of crime. We work in collaboration with the Atlanta Police Department and other first responders. We provide those victims are any any persons who were the victim of a crime, but they were not involved in the crime in any way. You understand what I'm saying? You can't rob a bank and then look for us to provide services to you. But if somebody was affected by that, we provide those services. And those services include court accompaniment, because a lot of people who are victims have never interfaced with the criminal justice system before, many of them, the victims, I mean. And so we help them to understand what's going on. You know, you go in the courtroom, you don't know what to say, what to do, who the public defender is, you know, who the prosecutor is. So the advocate helps them through that. That's early on. We provide court, that's the court accompaniment. We provide, the biggest piece is victims' compensation. Most, I tell you from personal experience, a lot of families do not have insurance to bury their children if they are the victims of homicide. And we have a lot of victims of homicide here lately. And most families do not have appropriate coverage to do that. And it's a terrible thing. Number one, it's a horrible, most just horrific and painstaking to lose a child and then not be able to bury your child, to do that last thing that you can do for them. And we have many parents who experience that. So we help them to get funding to bury their loved one. We help with housing, especially in domestic violence cases where the spouse or partner needs to leave that environment because of an abusive situation. We help them to get relocated, emergency relocation as well as long-term. We help them with their job. If they can't come to work because of some abuse, you know, you can see physical abuse and people don't want to come to work because they don't want questions asked. And so we help them, you know, by talking to their employer to let them know what's going on. The same thing with rentals. You know, they may be in a lease and need to be released from that lease because of the abusive situation. So those are just some of the things that Atlanta Victim Assistance does on behalf of victims of crime. But our whole theme is to move our victims to victors. You know, we want them to be whole again. And so we connect them with psychologists, we connect them with psychiatrists, any number of services, whatever they need to make them whole again, we help them get those services.
That sounds like an excellent program, a very comprehensive program.
We try to be, you know, and we try to have advocates who have either experienced some of these things so that they can truly help people knowing what they're going through.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, it's work that you've really got to feel and be passionate about it. I started because of my son's death, who was murdered by a young man who actually lived outside of this door across the street from us. But I learned so much in that experience. So I've come a long way. But a lot of parents are not there yet. And my goal, as long as I have breath and can walk and talk, my goal is to help those families move to a better place in their lives.
Ms. Muhammad, Ms. Irma Best asked, what is the residential criteria to receive Atlanta's victim assistance? Is it only for people who live in Atlanta, or is it Metro Atlanta? How does that work?
It's City of Atlanta, but if you don't have to necessarily live in the City of Atlanta, but if the incident occurred in the City of Atlanta, we can still provide services to you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And let me give you the number, 44588-4740.
Perfect. Thank you.
So the next book? When are we doing the next book?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I was going to say Dr. Hazzard, and as a matter of fact, is in the process of finalizing the last pieces of a book that she wrote with another author about immigration. Something happened, I think it's called Something Happened to My Father. If Anne were here, she could tell you the exact name of it. But, you know, it really addresses, unfortunately, what's happened when children's parents who were not born here in our country are deported, okay, and the impact that has on children. So she's in the throes of finalizing I think she spoke with me yesterday, as a matter of fact, about the choosing the illustration. So that's something that's coming forward. We have lots of ideas. Dr. Chelano and I have started to talk about really the impact of the environment, as a matter of fact, and children's responses to the impact of the environment. Another topic that the three of us have tossed around is really related to religious intolerance. How do you talk to your children about I guess I'll say the Holocaust, bombings in temples, what happened with, in Charleston, the unfortunate shooting, Charlottesville, all those things. So we have lots of ideas and things that we're working on. And, what I guess I'll say the consistent theme is to be able to provide a way for parents to talk to children about these difficult and challenging topics in a developmentally appropriate way, using words that children can understand, meeting them where they are. One thing that the three of us have always agreed upon, and I'm sure you would too, Brenda, is that the parents are in charge of their children. We're not trying to suggest or promote anything related to gun violence prevention. We certainly do advocate, for gun violence prevention, anti-racism, taking care of the environment, to be tolerant of differences in general. Okay, that's one thing the three of us do agree upon, but we don't feel it's our place to tell you how to do that within your household. So we try to provide the tools for you as a parent or even as an educator to be able to talk to children, to engage them in conversation so that they don't develop anxiety as Miles did, and can again become productive and contributing citizens to our society. One thing that I hadn't mentioned today is that aside from the notes in the back of Something Happened in Our Town and Something Happened in Our Park, we also have resources that are updated regularly by our publication company. Our publisher is Imagination Press, which is the publishing arm of the American Psychological Association. So on those websites, they're updated with topics related to either, anti-racism, or in this case, gun violence prevention. So that's another avenue that we try to make sure that we are providing as much information, as much free resource information as is possible.
Well, there's so much valuable information in these two books, but particularly this one, that we're talking about today, Something Happened in the Park. We want everybody. I think everybody should have this book. And there are those out there who want it. I know they want to keep those wonderfully illustrated pictures is another reason as well. It's attractive and it makes you want to read it. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
It really is. So with that said, I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to share with people how they can get the books and if they want to buy in groups, more than one.
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly, I don't know if you want to take that.
Yeah, I'm hopping on because we would love to help you get this book.
Okay.
I do want to let folks know we actually are doing a major website update that I thought was going to be done by this morning, and it's populating a little slower than I expected. So we have tons of copies of this and Something Happened in Our Town at Caris. We would love to, send it to you wherever you live in the country, but also help you get it into your schools, into libraries, boys and girls clubs, all of that, because as Ms. Muhammad said, it's really important that we get this not just into homes, but also, the community. So normally this teal link at the bottom center of the screen It may be working for some people because of how website updates work across the internet. So you may be able to just place your order by clicking that link. But if for whatever reason it does not work, I am putting our phone number in the chat. We are open right now. You can just call. We'll just take your order over the phone. We'll send it out today, and we'll get it to you. So we would love to help you that way. And if ever you want to place a bulk order in the future, or if you work with a school or a faith organization and you would like us to do that, you can just give us a call, and we're very happy to do that as well.
Or an organization like a nonprofit like ours. Well,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
want to make a commitment right now that we will purchase, Atlanta Victim Assistance will purchase several books, many
Yes,
books,
Thank you.
so that we can distribute to our mothers and parents that have lost children to violence or have witnessed it. So we have a support group every third Saturday. And so we'd like for them to have this book, and I'm sure it will be very helpful.
Oh, well, I was going to say, thank you so much, Brenda. Really appreciate that.
Oh, no, we're happy to do it. We're just elated to do this. And we want them to, we want to see a difference there. You know, you talk about children and the violence piece, and I'm going to say this quickly. I learned the hard way because I went through this. We're talking 35 years ago now. That this happened. I mean, it seems like always yesterday. I could tell you everything that happened that day and what time. But I had other children. I had my son and my daughter. And everybody was coming to me offering condolences and sympathy, you know, and I appreciate it. But they forgot about these other children, the two children who were best friends. They were all best friends, but nobody understood or paid attention to their pain, including me. I didn't recognize it like I should have. And I'm going to tell you, it will come back to haunt you if you don't give it the kind of attention that it deserves. So that's one of the reasons we founded Moms. You know, mothers of murdered sons and daughters that were just in the 80s, 89 is when this happened. These were just, they were looked upon as either doing something wrong, or there was this feeling even among our own people that they had to be doing something wrong if they got killed. You know, people just murder, but I think people are finding out now. We had to work on dispelling that myth. We realized that just locking up people was not the key. That was not the answer. Why are they being locked up? Why are they doing the things they're doing? What's going on in their minds? There's something wrong with a person if they take the life of another human being. There's something going on wrong, and it needs to be addressed. And so we fought hard to get violence under the health umbrella. Treat it like you treat riding on a motorcycle without a helmet. Treat it like you treat cigarettes. You know, if you want people to stop smoking, you did a campaign, public campaign. You made the companies put the information on the package. Whatever the case may be, treat violence like as a public health issue. And so we were fortunate that we got that. We have victim assistance programs across the country now. You know, there's not a city or a county where there's not a victim assistance program. So I'm really proud of the work that Moms did, you know, starting out. And you can expect some bigger things to come.
That's great.
In months to come.
That is great. That's such an important organization. Again, I'm just so impressed with how comprehensive it is. So thank you so much again for your support of our book and for the hard work that you've done, you know, out of tragedy. So certainly, you know, that's really, really noteworthy. I'd also like to thank Cheris for the bookstore here for hosting us today, and for always just being really supportive of the books that we've written, because again, you know, they're not the kind of books that are easy to read, you know, and so we really thank you for your ongoing support, and we just look forward to continuing this conversation.
Well, we pray you continue. We pray that you continue. We'll keep lifting you up. And you all keep doing the great work at both the terrace as well. Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. I don't know, what kind of moderator I am, but I can tell you my heart is there for sure.
Oh, for sure. And that's what we were looking for. We were looking for someone who was certainly a great spokesperson and who led with her heart, who could talk about it from that place, and who's gone on to overcome. Because what the organization that you just described, really is very consistent with the message in Something Happened in Our Park. You don't let gun violence just totally destroy you. You figure out a way to have strategies to overcome and to empower the community. So certainly, we're really pleased that you accepted our invitation to moderate. So thank you so much.
I was absolutely honored. So only thing left now, two things. One is to get my book signed. And secondly, to talk about next steps. You've got it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you all so much. Thank you to Dr. Hazzard. I apologize that we have had our technical difficulties today, but I know the good thing is that y'all are around and you do many public talks. So I hope that folks will continue to follow your work and follow and get another opportunity to hear Dr. Hazzard's take on the book, which is wonderful. Yes. Thank you so much to you, Dr. Collins, for holding it down for us today.
Yes.
And Ms. Muhammad, I really am honored to have you here. So folks, please just click this teal button, and if for whatever reason that is not yet populating and working, just give us a call at 404-524-0304, and we will get your books to you wherever you live in the United States. We do bulk orders, and we're just happy. We work with Imagination Press a lot. They are a wonderful press and do such important work. So this is something we feel very passionately about and very excited to be supporting. So I hope everybody stays safe and well, and we look forward to
go buy your Something Happened in Our Park.
Yeah, you can also just come into Karis because now we're just open. So we're finally just open. Yeah, you can just come to us at 184 South Candler, Decatur, Georgia 30030. So,